Cincinnati Bengals, Denver Broncos, Monday Night Football, everything you need to know for your fantasy teams and player projections in 15 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these for every single primetime game and every game on Sunday to give you the best information possible and a unique edge looking at coverage data, run scheme metrics, and overall trends that nobody really talks about because it relates to the schemes behind the game of football and not just the numbers themselves. Without further ado, let's get into it. As always, my picks are on my socials. There is a link in the description for those. Make sure you are following if you're not already. But Cincinnati is a 7.5-point underdog against the Denver Broncos. The total in this game is 44.5. As always, the Denver Broncos home field advantage on Monday Night Football. I will start by saying I think they are a much better team than their record should suggest, right? They lose to the Indianapolis Colts on a bad penalty. They play the Chargers really tough. This is a better team than you think. In terms of the Bengals data outliers defensively, these three things are huge. The 6th most running back rush attempts and 6th most running back rush yards. Now, the Bengals defense in terms of efficiency is not that bad against the running back position, but teams run the ball a lot against them, especially after week 1. Teams have had success. Joe Burrow's gone down. This team has struggled in terms of game flow, and that's why they give up so many yards. I don't think this game's going to be any different. They're giving up the 9th most quarterback yards, 2 touchdown passes a game, as well as the 7th most tight end receptions and 9th most tight end yards, which is very, very interesting because you look at the Denver Broncos injury report here. Evan Engram was a full participant virtually all week and is ready to go after not playing, I believe, the last 2 games, maybe the full 3, but at least the last 2 for the Denver Broncos. In terms of coverage data, they're top 10 in man-to-man. Now, in terms of target rate, Marvin Mims is number 1. In terms of overall targets against man, interesting, Troy Franklin. Not Cortland Sutton, not any of the running back. Troy Franklin is number 1 in terms of overall targets against man. Now, when you look at the target rates, the Bengals allow a lot of targets on the outside and in the slot. The Denver Broncos throw much more frequently in the slot, where Troy Franklin has, by far, the most routes from the slot. 0.28 targets per out run, which is a decent number, and then 1.78 yards per out run, which is a pretty good number. Now, Cortland Sutton has a higher targets per out run and more yards per out run from the slot, but far, far less opportunities. He doesn't really run from the slot much. Now, the inline position is another very interesting spot because Troy Franklin has taken all those reps with Evan Engram being banged up and not playing a lot of snaps. I think that changes with Evan Engram coming back this week. I think it changes a lot, actually. Now, backfield, we know Sean Payton's offense loves to throw to the running back position. J.K. Dobbins has been dominating snap counts, dominating touch counts. I'm not really leaning into the receiving game in the running back world too much. Again, I think this is a game Denver has a pretty firm hold of, controls pretty well, so I don't think throwing to the running back position as the game goes on will be a necessity. Minimal checkdowns, things like that. The scheme touches will always be there for Denver. I don't feel super comfortable leaning into it, though. Run scheme metrics, though, is where I really, really like. Now, in terms schematically, there's nothing really that sticks out. But in terms of overall, Denver has the 5th most yards per carry. Cincinnati is allowing, we talked about, top 10 or bottom 10 in running back attempts, running back yards. Bottom 10, actually bottom 3 in fantasy points per game allowed to opposing running backs, so overall production, as well as back-to-back weeks with multiple running back touchdowns. Yes, multiple, more than 1. Dobbins is coming off the highest snap count of the season last week in a Denver offense, averaging the 5th most yards per carry in the entire NFL. If you look at the game script, you look at the matchup, the spread, everything points to J.K. Dobbins having a great game. I would think off the top of my head, it's about 70 yards on the ground. And you go look at the game logs for J.K. Dobbins in the past, you feel moderately comfortable with the production he's had against good run defenses, right? 76 against a solid run defense in Indy, 63 against Tennessee, 83 against the Chargers. Guys, he's only projected 61 yards on the ground. I am 100% on that, not financial or professional advice, but I'm on it, and a touchdown. Troy Franklin, this should be 3, excuse me. Troy Franklin's at 40.5. The numbers would suggest you like it, you get on it. However, Evan Engram's coming back. I don't know if the pass volume is going to be there. I'm staying away from a guy that's, you got a lot of questions about. And you, again, look at his game logs in the past. You go back to week 2 where Troy Franklin has 8 for 89, a touchdown. You're like, okay, this guy's back. And then he has 2 for 8 against the Chargers defense who hasn't been great against wide receivers. Staying away there. But Evan Engram, 3+ catches is actually plus money at the time I'm recording this. I'm sprinkling a little bit there. Let's talk Denver Broncos offense. In terms of their outliers, it's weird. It always comes up, but 10th most wide receiver receptions. Teams are going to have to throw the ball because they play so much man. It's the 2nd most man-to-man in the NFL, and they play the 7th most middle field closed. Now, the reality is they are really, really good against the run in terms of the attempts they allow. They're middle of the pack in terms of efficiency. And Cincinnati, as you can see down here, second fewest rush attempts in the NFL. Chase Brown's been bad on the ground. Their offensive line is banged up. And you go look at the Broncos injury report, right? Obviously, week 1, starter goes down. Dalton Risner, full participant, is playing. But you go look on the other side now. Noah Fant, a guy who's been out there run blocking a bunch, is out. It's a little scary to me to trust the Bengals run offense in a game where they're a touchdown underdog and they haven't been running the ball well to begin with. But I want to ask you, do you remember what happened the last time these two teams played? I know Joe Burrow was the quarterback and Joe Burrow led them to a win, but in terms of the production, do you remember the last time these two teams played? It was the pick on Riley Moss fest. And I think that's going to happen again in this game. Now, T. Higgins has an enormous increase against man-to-man. You may remember last time T. Higgins had, I think, multiple touchdowns, over 100 yards. He played his behind off against this Broncos defense and, essentially led the Bengals to a victory with him and Joe Burrow. But it's important to note that it's not just the past production that we're leaning into with T. Higgins. It is an enormous increase in man-to-man in terms of target rate, overall targets, yards per route run, targets per route run, like everything to T. Higgins is man. He actually has the most targets, more than Jamar Chase, against man all year long. Both Higgins and Chase have an average depth of target of nearly 15 yards down the field, regardless of who's playing quarterback. They're airing it out and they're giving one-on-one opportunities. Pat Surtain is going to follow Jamar Chase. That's very, very likely what is going to happen. But do you really trust a Surtain shadow when the projections here are 63.5 yards? And this 4.5 reception number is minus like 170 right now, so it's going to get bumped up. But 63.5 yards. I know all it takes is one, but I would much prefer Higgins at 4 catches or 49 yards for sure. And when you go look at the inline tight end numbers, it's very interesting because you go to the game logs against this Denver Broncos defense, and there's been some solid days. Oronde Gadsden, who got more production last week, 5 for 46. Tyler Warren, 4 for 79. So the overall volume is not there, but the explosive ability is. And when you go look at the Cincinnati Bengals, there's a player that sticks out to me because of his multiplicity in this offense. When you go look at a guy like Mike Gesicki, who, granted, has not been playing a ton. It's been the Noah Fant show, but Noah Fant is out. You go look at these target rates, right? He can play the inline spot, which Cincinnati Bengals throw to at the second highest rate in the league. He can also play the slot spot, where you're not going to get a true Jahdae Barron shadow. You're not going to get either of the top 2 corners coming inside with you. It's going to be on backers. It's going to be on safeties. And you really like those matchups if you're Jake Browning, if you have those opportunities. But I'm more looking at the early downs when the Broncos are in cover 3, like we talked about, 7th most middle field closed in the entire NFL. And they have opportunities to kind of sit back and force the Bengals to dink and dunk down the field. Mike Gesicki, 3+ catches, is a beautiful thing. Now, I also like Chase Brown in that same sense because, again, he's going to have to get involved in the pass game. There's going to be times where the Broncos are not going to line up in man-to-man. They play a ton of cover 3. We know this on early downs. Chase Brown is going to be the guy in the receiving game. But I can't stress enough, T. Higgins is the guy you need to look at in this game because of past production, the shadow he is going to see, and the fact that they're probably going to be losing this game. I'm going to finish by going back to the top here. This 7.5 number, I don't think it's disrespectful because, Denver still is 1-2 right now. And I think the Bengals have the offensive playmakers to keep up. But Denver's defense is good. Denver's offensive line is good. Bo Nix has not started the year great, but he's a solid quarterback. They have playmakers. J.K. Dobbins looks great. There's no world to me where Denver, number 1, loses this game. But number 2 can't win this game by more than a touchdown. I think the total is a solid number. I think the Bengals defense can do enough to slam the door to kind of keep the number down. So I'm staying away there. But I truly do think Denver can win this game by a touchdown. As always, guys, if you're new, make sure you subscribe. There's another Monday Night Football breakdown for the Jets-Dolphins game in the description below. I appreciate you guys. We will see you next time. God bless.